The chamber was a cathedral of forgotten words, its towering shelves laden with ancient manuscripts. Dust motes danced in the dim light, not falling, but rising, defying the very laws of gravity. In the center of the room, a single brass lantern flickered erratically, its flame trembling as if in fear of something unseen. Upon a stone pedestal rested a book, its leather cover bound shut by red sealing threads that pulsed with a faint crimson light. A figure emerged from the shadows. This was Lysar, the Order's Cryptant reader. His robes were a tapestry of layered parchment straps, covered in ink that shifted and swirled with a life of its own. Small metallic glyphs hung from his belt, their soft clinking the only sound in the oppressive silence. His fingertips were stained black, a testament to a lifetime spent deciphering forbidden texts. He approached the pedestal with a practiced caution, his eyes fixed on the pulsing red threads. They seemed like veins, carrying a strange arcane blood. Lysar extended his hand, hovering it just above the book's cover, not daring to make contact. Instantly, the threads tightened, pulling taut against the binding with a low hum. He whispered to himself, his voice barely disturbing the air, a cipher waking on its own. Impossible. As if in response to his words, every torch in the library extinguished at once, plunging the chamber into an abyss of darkness. Only the brass lantern remained lit, its flame now burning a cold, ethereal blue. The rising dust particles froze mid-air, suspended in time. Then, slowly, they began to move again, not drifting, but arranging themselves into intricate, glowing runes. The runes formed concentric circles around Lysar, rotating like the gears of some celestial clock. A sharp, violent crack echoed through the silence. The red threads had snapped. The book flew open, landing on a page that was utterly blank. But it did not remain so for long. Dark ink began to seep from the edges of the paper, bleeding inward like fresh wounds. The ink pooled and swirled in the center of the page, coalescing until it formed a symbol Lysar had never seen before, a spiral fracturing inward, collapsing into itself. This wasn't written by any keeper. Not from this era, he breathed, his mind racing. The dust runes around him shuddered violently, then scattered only to reform into a single, unmistakable shape, an arrow pointing toward the shadowed recesses of the library, into a darkness deeper than any he had known. Lysar knew he had no choice but to follow. The arrow of light guided him down aisles that defied the Order's architectural maps, passages that should not exist. The towering shelves seemed to breathe, bending and warping as he passed, books sliding in and out of their places without being touched. The air grew colder, his breath misting before him. The passage narrowed, constricting until he reached a dead end. But it was not dark. An eerie phosphorescent glow emanated from the space ahead. Suspended in the air without any visible support, floated a stone tablet, ancient and weathered. Its surface was scarred with a crack, the very same pattern as the symbol from the book. But here the fracture was worse, with new splinters spider-webbing out in all directions. as if the damage was actively spreading. As Lysar approached, the dust in the air coalesced once more, forming letters that hung like spectral warnings in the gloom. The fourth crack is not the last. A low, resonant hum began to emanate from the stone tablet, a vibration that thrummed deep within Lysar's chest, shaking him to his very core. Suddenly, the tablet erupted. A beam of pale, blinding light shot past Lysar, striking the open cipher book he had left on the pedestal far behind him. Even from this distance, he could see its pages flipping wildly, driven by an invisible, furious wind. Then, as abruptly as it began, the flippant stopped. The beam of light vanished. Lysar squinted, trying to make out the page it had landed on. He could see glyphs, but they were not static. They were moving, alive, constantly reshuffling themselves like puzzle pieces, desperately seeking their correct positions. He didn't hesitate. He turned and ran, his footsteps echoing in the unnatural corridor. Reaching the pedestal, he saw the glyphs had finally settled. They had aligned into a structured phrase that burned with a faint, sickly luminescence. He leaned closer to read the impossible message. The breaker does not walk alone. The moment the words registered in his mind, the hidden isle he had just emerged from collapsed. It wasn't a physical collapse of stone and wood, but an implosion of reality itself. A thunderous slam echoed as shelves slammed shut, and the entire passage was consumed by absolute darkness. The dust symbols that had guided him exploded like sand in a gale, dissolving into nothingness. The unnatural cold receded. Lysar grabbed the cipher book, clutching it to his chest as if it were his own heart. He ran from the pedestal, heading for the library's main hall. Behind him, the impossible aisle sealed itself, stone grinding against stone until no trace of the passage remained. He burst into the grand chamber just as the dust, for the first time since he'd entered, began to fall normally, obeying the laws of nature once more. One by one, the torches on the walls reignited, their familiar, warm light casting long, dancing shadows across the room. Panting, his heart hammering against his ribs, Lysar opened the cipher book one last time. He watched, transfixed, as a new line of text appeared on the page. It was not written with ink. The letters were being carved into the very parchment by an invisible force, smoking and glowing as they burned themselves into existence. Two shadows follow the bell. A tremor ran through Lysar's hands. He exhaled sharply, the sound loud in the now quiet library. He closed the book with deliberate care, his movements precise despite his shaking. He took spare binding cords from his belt and wrapped them tightly round the book, securing its dangerous secrets. "The council must see this immediately," he muttered, his voice grim. With a sharp breath, he extinguished the flame of the brass lantern, plunging the central chamber back into shadow. He moved to the heavy oak doors, locking them with 3 distinct turns of 3 different brass keys. Then he disappeared down the corridor, his hurried footsteps echoing, growing fainter and fainter, until there was only silence.